The massive exploratory vessel Celestial Harmony glided through the darkness of space at the edge of what the galactic hegemony had mapped in their 10,000 years of space travel. Commander Zixtar stood on the bridge with his forearms crossed behind his back, his scaled skin reflecting the soft blue lights of the control panels around him. The hegemony had ruled the stars for millennia without any serious challenge to their power or technology. Today was supposed to be a routine exploration mission to catalog resources in this quiet sector. "Commander, we have detected an unknown vessel ahead," said Navigator Prin, her thin fingers dancing over the control panel. "It does not match any known design in our database." Zixtar tilted his head, his yellow eyes narrowing with curiosity rather than concern. The hegemony had encountered many new species over the centuries, and first contact always followed the same pattern. The primitive species would be awed by hegemony technology, eager to join their peaceful collective, and grateful for the protection and knowledge they offered. "Bring us closer but maintain defensive screens at standard levels," Zixtar ordered calmly. "Prepare the welcome protocols and translation matrices." Across the vast emptiness of space, aboard the United Earth ship, Relentless, Captain Susan Miller received an urgent message from Earth Command. The Relentless was the newest addition to Earth's defense fleet, secretly equipped with technology that humanity had developed during their first 100 years of venturing beyond their solar system. What had begun as exploration vessels had quickly evolved into warships after humanity's first violent encounters with other species. "Captain, we're picking up an unknown ship approaching Jupiter's orbit," said Communications Officer Scott Young, his voice tense but controlled. "It's massive, unlike anything we've encountered before." Susan stood from her captain's chair, her short brown hair framing a face that had seen more combat than most officers twice her age. At 38, she was the youngest captain in the UA fleet, chosen specifically for this mission because of her quick thinking and adaptability. "Alert status yellow," she commanded. "Power up defensive systems but keep weapons on standby only. We don't want to appear hostile if they're peaceful." Lieutenant Alan Reeves at the weapons station nodded, his fingers hovering over controls that could unleash devastation if needed. The Relentless had been built for war, even though humanity hoped for peace. Earth had learned the hard way that the galaxy wasn't always friendly. "The alien vessel is slowing, Captain," reported Navigation Officer Kimberly Jones. "They appear to be taking up a position about 50,000 kilometers from us." Susan nodded. "Perfect observation distance. They're cautious, just like us." The bridge fell silent as the two ships faced each other in the void, each crew studying, the other through sensors and scans. On the Celestial Harmony, Science Officer Krill reported his findings with confusion in his voice. "Commander, initial scans indicate this species has only achieved space travel within the past century. Their vessel shows signs of primitive fusion propulsion, but—" He paused, rechecking his instruments. "There are energy readings I cannot explain with our current understanding of their technological level." Commander Zixtar waved a dismissive hand. "Many young species discover unusual energy applications before mastering the basics. It's of no concern. Open communications channels and begin the greeting sequence." The hegemony had standard first contact protocols that had worked flawlessly for thousands of years. They would demonstrate their vastly superior technology through a simple display, establish communication, then welcome the new species into their collective with promises of knowledge and protection. Aboard the Relentless, Lieutenant Ryan Peters at the sensor station frowned at his readings. "Captain, they're powering up some kind of energy projector. Not weapons grade, but definitely directed toward us." Susan's eyes narrowed. Earth's history with alien contact had taught them caution. Shields to full power, prepare evasive maneuvers if needed. The Relentless's AI system, known as Sentinel, automatically analyzed the incoming energy signature. "Captain, the alien vessel appears to be attempting a standard communication protocol using modulated energy pulses. However, their transmission method would interfere with our propulsion systems if our shields were not raised." Susan relaxed slightly but remained alert. "Could be an honest mistake or a deliberate test of our defenses. Let's not jump to conclusions. Try to establish communications." on all standard frequencies. On the celestial harmony, confusion spread across the bridge as their initial greeting pulse reflected harmlessly off the human ship's defenses. Impossible, muttered Krill, checking his instruments again. A species at their development stage shouldn't have energy shielding capable of deflecting our communication beams. Commander Zixtar stepped closer to the main view screen, studying the human ship with new interest. Its design was angular and practical, lacking the elegant curves and aesthetic flourishes of hegemony vessels. Yet something about it projected an unmistakable sense of purpose. This was not an exploration vessel or a trade ship. Its design spoke of only one purpose: war. They may have acquired shield technology from another species, suggested first Officer Vela. It has happened before with primitive races finding technology they don't fully understand. Zixtar shook his head. No, look at the configuration. Those aren't salvaged shields patched together. That's an integrated defense system designed specifically for their hull geometry. For the first time in his 300-year career, the commander felt a flicker of unease. They are attempting to communicate with us, reported communications specialist Drez. Multiple frequencies, very systematic approach. On the Relentless, communications officer Scott Young finally established a stable link. Captain, I've got something. Their language is complex, but our translation algorithms are adapting. Before Susan could respond, the alien commander's image appeared on the main screen. Zixtar was an imposing figure with blue-gray scaled skin, forearms, and yellow eyes that seemed to look through rather than at her. Unknown vessel. The alien's words came through the translator with only slight delays. You have entered territory under the protection of the galactic hegemony. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Susan stepped forward, keeping her expression neutral. This is Captain Susan Miller of the UES Relentless. We are on a routine patrol mission within our own solar system. According to our star charts, this region is unclaimed space. We were unaware of any territorial boundaries. The alien commander seemed taken aback by her direct response. The translation system couldn't quite capture the subtle changes in his expression, but his posture stiffened noticeably. Your solar system falls within the outer expansion zone of the hegemony, Zixtar stated. We have cataloged this region for future development. Your presence is unexpected. Susan chose her next words carefully. We've been exploring beyond our planet for over a century without encountering your hegemony. Perhaps we should establish proper diplomatic channels to avoid future misunderstandings. On the celestial harmony, Zixtar cut the transmission temporarily to consult with his officers. A century of space travel and they've built warships of this caliber? First Officer Vela couldn't hide her disbelief. That rate of development is unprecedented. Krill nodded in agreement. Most species take at least 5 centuries to develop basic shield technology after achieving spaceflight. Either they're lying about their history or they develop at a rate we've never encountered before, finished Zixtar. Prepare a standard warning demonstration. Target their propulsion section with a low-power energy pulse. Not enough to cause serious damage, just enough to show our technological advantage and bring this conversation to more appropriate terms. The Celestial Harmony's weapons officer calibrated the energy weapons to fire a precisely calculated warning shot. In the 10,000 years of hegemony history, this demonstration had never failed to establish the proper hierarchy in first contact situations. On the Relentless, alarms blared as Sentinel detected the weapons powering up. Captain, they're targeting our engines, Alan reported, his hand now firmly on the weapons controls. Susan's expression hardened. It seems diplomacy isn't their first choice after all. Maintain shields at maximum. Do not return fire unless I give the command. The alien vessel fired. A brilliant beam of energy lanced across space toward the Relentless and dissipated harmlessly against the human ship's shields. On the Celestial Harmony's bridge, silence fell as the weapons officer reported the impossible. Commander, our warning shot had no effect. Their shields absorbed the energy completely. For the first time in his long life, Commander Zixtar felt something he had never expected to experience in a first contact situation: fear. Lieutenant Alan Reeves studied the readings on his weapons console with growing interest. The alien beam that had just hit their shields was using a particle acceleration method that Earth military scientists had figured out how to counter almost 30 years ago. He tapped several commands into his station, analyzing the full spectrum of the attack. "Captain," he called to Susan Miller, who stood calmly at the center of the relentless bridge. "Their weapons technology is surprisingly outdated. The energy signature shows they're using standard particle beam weapons without phase variation. Our adaptive shield matrix handled it without even reaching 10% capacity." Susan raised an eyebrow but kept her eyes on the main view screen, where the alien ship hung against the backdrop of space. "Are you saying their weapons are primitive, Lieutenant?" Alan shook his head. "Not primitive exactly, just predictable. It's like they developed the technology to a certain point and then stopped innovating. There's no evidence of the adaptive targeting or phase shifting that we developed during the Mars conflict." On the bridge of the Celestial Harmony, panic was beginning to spread among the crew. Science Officer Krill frantically recalibrated his instruments, convinced they must be malfunctioning. The readings simply couldn't be correct. No species at such an early stage of development should be able to completely neutralize hegemony weapons. "Technology, Commander," Krill reported, his voice strained. "I've verified the sensor readings 3 times. Their defensive shield technology is unlike anything in our database. It appears to adapt to our energy frequency in real time." Commander Zixtar paced the bridge, all 4 of his arms now moving in agitated patterns that betrayed his growing concern. "How is this possible? Our records show this species only achieved space travel 97 years ago. Such adaptive technology should be centuries beyond their capability." First Officer Vela suggested, "Perhaps they received assistance from an unknown advanced species?" Zixtar considered this. Throughout hegemony history, they occasionally encountered species that had been uplifted by others. Given technology, they couldn't possibly have developed themselves. But something about this situation felt different. The human ship's design was distinctly unique, not derivative of any known civilization's technology. "Re-establish communication," he ordered. "I want to understand exactly who we're dealing with." Back on the relentless, Communications Officer Scott Young looked up from his console. "Captain, they're hailing us again." Susan nodded. On screen, Commander Zixtar appeared again, but his previous confidence had visibly diminished. "Captain, Miller of Earth vessel. Our sensors indicate our demonstration had no effect on your shields. This is unexpected. The galactic hegemony has encountered thousands of species, and none at your development stage have possessed such defensive capabilities." Susan kept her expression neutral, years of military training helping her mask any satisfaction at the aliens' obvious confusion. "Commander, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. What you call a demonstration appeared to our sensors as a direct attack on our propulsion systems. In human space, such actions could be considered hostile." She paused, then added, "However, I'm willing to accept this was merely a cultural difference in first contact protocols. I suggest we start again, with peaceful communication rather than weapons demonstrations." While the conversation continued, Lieutenant Patricia Woods at the communications station worked quietly with Sentinel to establish a more stable translation link with the alien vessel. The AI system was rapidly building a more comprehensive language model based on the alien transmissions. "Captain," Patricia whispered, "Sentinel is detecting a significant power buildup in the alien vessel. They appear to be preparing their main weapons array." Susan acknowledged this with a slight nod but maintained her diplomatic expression toward Zixtar. "Commander, our sensors indicate your vessel is powering weapon systems. I hope this is not in preparation for another demonstration." On the Celestial Harmony, Zixtar had indeed ordered a full battle readiness assessment. The hegemony protocol for encountering unexpectedly advanced species was clear. Determine the full extent of their capabilities before proceeding with diplomatic relations. "Captain Miller," Zixtar responded, "the hegemony has maintained peace across 27% of this galaxy for over 10,000 years. Our protocols exist to establish clear understanding between species. Your shields have proven impressive, but we must assess your full capabilities before we can properly classify your civilization. Without further warning, the alien ship fired its main weapons array. Multiple beams of concentrated energy streaked toward the Relentless, each targeting different critical systems. This was not a warning shot, but a full systems test, designed to probe the human ship's defensive capabilities across multiple attack vectors. On the Relentless bridge, Sentinel automatically raised shield power to maximum and optimized the defense grid against the incoming attack. The ship trembled slightly but held firm as the alien weapons fire dispersed across its shields. Shields holding at 87%, reported Alan, sounding almost amused. Their targeting systems are focusing on what they think are our vulnerable points, but they're working from an outdated understanding of starship design. Our distributed systems architecture is confusing their targeting computers. Susan's patience was wearing thin. This has gone far enough. Mr. Reeves, prepare a measured response. Target their secondary weapons array only. Minimal power. I want to demonstrate our capabilities without causing serious damage. Alan nodded and programmed the targeting solution. Ready, Captain. Fire. A single pulse of energy left the Relentless, precisely striking the alien vessel's secondary weapons array. The beam cut through the alien shields as if they weren't even there, and disabled the targeted system with surgical precision. On the Celestial Harmony, alarms blared as systems went offline. The bridge crew stared in disbelief at their readouts. Secondary weapons array completely disabled, reported the weapons officer, shock evident in his voice. Their beam penetrated our shields without any resistance. How is this possible? Science Officer Krill studied the attack data with growing horror. Their weapon used a phase-shifting technology that our shields aren't designed to stop. It's as if they knew exactly how our defenses work and precisely how to bypass them. Commander Zixtar gripped the edges of his command station. In 10,000 years of hegemony exploration and occasional conflict, they had never encountered a species that could so easily penetrate their defenses. His mind raced with implications. If these humans could so easily disable their weapons with what appeared to be a carefully restrained shot, what else were they capable of? Back on the Relentless, Susan leaned forward in her chair. Open a channel. When Zixtar's image appeared, she spoke calmly but firmly. Commander, I hope we've now established that further weapons demonstrations are unnecessary and potentially dangerous for both our vessels. The UES Relentless is primarily an exploration ship, but we are equipped to defend ourselves when needed. I would much prefer we continue our conversation without further shows of force. Chief Engineer Frank Sullivan entered the bridge during this exchange and moved quietly to Susan's side. Captain, he whispered, I've completed analysis of their shield technology based on sensor readings during our response. Their entire defense system is based on a fixed frequency barrier that we abandoned decades ago during the resource wars. They haven't developed the adaptive modulation that became standard after our first contact with the Proxima hostiles. Susan processed this information while maintaining eye contact with the alien commander. The implications were becoming clear. Despite the hegemony's apparent age and vast territory, their technological development had stagnated. They had expanded through space using the same technologies for possibly thousands of years, never facing challenges that forced rapid innovation. Earth's history had been entirely different. From the moment humans reached space, they had faced one crisis after another. Resource shortages, conflicts between colonies, and hostile alien encounters had all driven a desperate race for technological advancement. Humanity hadn't had the luxury of slow, methodical development. They adapted or died. Commander Zixtar, Susan said, I propose we both stand down our weapon systems and begin proper diplomatic discussions. The United Earth government would be interested in establishing peaceful relations with your hegemony. On the Celestial Harmony, Zixtar was having an urgent conference with his senior officers. Their weapon completely ignored our shields, First Officer Vela said, her voice low. If they had targeted our main power core instead of a secondary weapons array. Zixtar nodded grimly. They deliberately chose a non-critical target, a show of restraint. Or a warning, added Krill. They wanted us to know they could have done much worse. The commander turned back to the communication screen. For the first time in his long career, he found himself negotiating from a position of technological inferiority. It was a humbling experience. "Captain Miller," he replied, his tone notably more respectful. "The Galactic Hegemony agrees to peaceful diplomatic discussions. We will power down our remaining weapon systems as a gesture of goodwill." Chief Engineer Frank Sullivan walked across the bridge of the Relentless toward Captain Susan Miller, carrying a data tablet that displayed his analysis of the alien technology. His weathered face showed the excitement of a man who had spent decades studying propulsion and weapon systems, now faced with entirely new tech to examine. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, maintaining the tense peace that had been established with the alien vessel. "Captain, I've completed a more thorough analysis of the Hegemony ship," Frank said, keeping his voice low. "Their technology is fascinating, but not for the reasons we might expect. They have incredible advancements in some areas and puzzling gaps in others." Susan motioned for him to continue, her eyes still watchful of the main screen where the alien ship floated in space, its weapons powered down as agreed. "Their faster-than-light drive is more efficient than ours," Frank explained, showing her the relevant data. "They've clearly been refining the same basic technology for centuries, maybe longer. But their weapons and defensive systems?" He shook his head in disbelief. "It's like they developed to a certain point and just stopped." "Why would an advanced civilization stop improving their defensive capabilities?" Susan asked, genuinely curious. Frank rubbed his gray beard thoughtfully. "My guess? They never needed to. From what their commander said, they've been the dominant power in their region of space for thousands of years. Without significant threats or competition, there was no pressure to innovate." Lieutenant Alan Reeves joined their conversation. "Earth's history couldn't be more different. The resource wars of the 2080s forced us to develop shield technology that could adapt to new weapons almost instantly. When we encountered the Proxima hostiles in 2097, we had to redesign our entire defensive approach in less than a year." Susan nodded, understanding dawning on her face. "So while they were cruising through space unchallenged for millennia, we were fighting for our survival, forcing rapid innovation." Frank smiled grimly. "Exactly, Captain. Human history is messy and violent, but it pushed our technology forward at an incredible pace. The Hegemony's peaceful expansion gave them no reason to prepare for a species like us." On the bridge of the Celestial Harmony, a similar conversation was taking place, though with a very different tone. Commander Zixtar had assembled his senior staff to discuss the human vessel and its implications for the Hegemony. "Our initial scans were correct," Science Officer Krill reported, his normal confidence shaken. "This species achieved spaceflight only 97 years ago, yet their defensive and weapons technologies surpass our own in several critical areas." First Officer Vela's scaled skin had paled to a lighter blue, a sign of distress in their species. "How is this possible? The development curve theory has been proven across thousands of species. No civilization develops shield-piercing weapons before achieving at least 4 centuries of space exploration." Commander Zixtar stared at the holographic display of the human warship. "The development curve theory assumes a species expands peacefully into space, with occasional conflicts driving gradual military advancement. We need to examine these humans' history." Krill activated another display showing information they had received during their communication with the Earth vessel. According to their transmitted historical overview, humans nearly destroyed their own planet multiple times before reaching space. They developed nuclear weapons less than a century after discovering basic electricity. The bridge fell silent. As the implications sank in, the Hegemony had always assumed that any species violent enough to develop weapons at such a rate would inevitably destroy themselves before achieving space travel. The humans had somehow survived their own destructive tendencies and emerged into the galaxy with war technology, honed by centuries of conflict. "They're not just advanced," Zixtar said quietly. "They're dangerous in a way we've never encountered. Their entire technological development has been shaped by warfare and competition." Back aboard the Relentless, Dr. Linda Howard, the ship's science officer, entered the bridge carrying her own analysis of the alien vessel. A brilliant physicist with expertise in xenobiology, she had been studying the hegemony ship's biological systems rather than its technology. "Captain, I've made some interesting discoveries about our new friends," she said, joining the group near the command chair. "Their species has an extremely long lifespan. Based on biological readings, Commander Zixtar is approximately 300 years old." Susan's eyebrows raised in surprise. 300 years? That would change their entire perspective on technological development. Linda nodded. "When you live for centuries, innovation naturally slows down. Why rush to develop something new when you can spend decades perfecting existing technology? Humans, with our shorter lives, feel urgency that drives rapid change." Frank made the connection immediately. So not only did they lack external threats, but their biology predisposed them to slower, more methodical development. "That explains a lot," Alan added. "Their weapons technology looks like someone took a good idea and spent 100 years refining it without ever questioning the fundamental approach." The communication console chimed, interrupting their discussion. "Communications Officer Patricia," Woods looked up from her station. "Captain, Commander Zixtar is requesting to resume our conversation." Susan straightened her uniform and nodded. On screen, the alien commander appeared, his posture noticeably less rigid than during their earlier exchanges. "Captain Miller, my senior staff and I have been discussing our encounter. The hegemony prides itself on scientific understanding, yet your ship presents us with many questions." Susan chose her words carefully. "Space is vast, Commander. It's not surprising that different species would develop along different technological paths." Zixtar made a gesture with his upper right hand that the translation system identified as indicating respectful disagreement. "It is more than that, Captain. Our civilization has cataloged the development of over 10,000 species. None have achieved your level of defensive and offensive capability at your stage of development. We would like to understand how this happened." Susan glanced at her officers, receiving small nods of approval. Sharing their history might help establish better relations, and there was little risk in explaining what had driven human innovation. "Commander, Earth's path to the stars was not peaceful or straightforward. Our history is filled with conflicts that pushed our technology forward at an accelerated rate. When we finally reached space, we carried those lessons with us." On his ship, Zixtar listened intently as Captain Miller gave a brief overview of human history. The resource wars that had nearly depleted Earth's natural resources. The Mars colony rebellion that forced advancements in long-range weapons. The first contact with a hostile alien species that had led to a complete redesign of Earth's defensive systems. Each crisis had forced humanity to adapt or perish, creating a technological evolution that moved in leaps rather than the steady progression the hegemony was accustomed to. What took the long-lived aliens centuries to perfect, humans accomplished in decades out of sheer necessity. "Your species turned survival into an art form," Zixtar observed when Susan finished her explanation. "The hegemony has maintained peace through technological superiority for so long that we never considered what might emerge from a more competitive environment." Susan's expression remained diplomatic, but there was a hint of pride in her voice. "Humans don't seek conflict, Commander, but we prepare for it. It's in our nature to plan for the worst while hoping for the best." As the conversation continued, both sides began to recognize the unique strengths of the other. The hegemony had achieved remarkable stability and social development, creating a peaceful multi-species civilization that spanned thousands of star systems. Humans had developed adaptive, innovative approaches to technology that allowed them to overcome challenges at an astonishing rate. In the observation lounge adjacent to the Relentless Bridge, Frank Sullivan stood with Linda Howard and Alan Reeves, watching the stars and the alien vessel in the distance. "You know what the real irony is?" Frank said softly. "For all our advanced weapons and shields, we're still using their theoretical framework for faster-than-light travel. They've had thousands of years to perfect it, and it shows." Linda nodded. "Different paths, different priorities. They focused on expansion and exploration. We focused on survival and defense." Alan leaned against the viewport. Do you think they realize what would happen if they actually tried to conquer Earth? Their entire fleet would be using outdated weapons and shield technology. Frank's expression turned serious. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The hegemony could still overwhelm us with sheer numbers, and we have a lot to learn from each other. As the diplomatic talks progressed, both species began to understand that this encounter would forever change the balance of power in the galaxy. The hegemony would need to accelerate their military development if they wished to maintain their position, while humanity would gain access to centuries of scientific knowledge that could propel their civilization forward. Neither side fully trusted the other yet, but both recognized the potential benefits of cooperation over conflict. Commander Zixtar paced the private chamber adjacent to the Celestial Harmony's bridge, his forearms clasped behind his back as he considered the dire situation facing his ship and possibly the entire hegemony. The diplomatic talks with the TOE humans had continued for several hours, but he could not shake the feeling of vulnerability that now plagued him. For the first time in his 300-year career, he faced a species with military technology that outmatched his own. "Commander, the Council is demanding updates," First Officer Vela said as she entered the room. "They find our reports about human capabilities difficult to believe." Zixtar made a gesture of frustration with his upper left hand. The Council has grown complacent after 10,000 years of unchallenged dominance. They cannot imagine a young species posing any real threat. "What are your orders?" Vela asked, her voice lowered. "The diplomatic channel remains open, but our sensors detect the humans are continuing to scan our vessel in detail. They are learning about our technology with every passing moment." The commander turned to face his officer. His yellow eyes narrowed with determination. "Activate the gravitational disruptor. If diplomacy fails, we must be prepared to protect the hegemony at all costs." Vela's scales paled in shock. "The disruptor? But Commander, we've only deployed that weapon 3 times. In the entire history of the hegemony, the energy requirements alone will leave us vulnerable for hours afterward." "I am aware of the risks," Zixtar said firmly. "But we cannot allow this ship to return to Earth with detailed knowledge of our weaknesses. The humans must understand the full extent of our power. Prepare the weapon, but do not activate it unless I give the direct order." Vela bowed slightly and left to carry out her instructions. Alone again, Zixtar felt the weight of 10,000 years of hegemony history on his shoulders. The gravitational disruptor was their most closely guarded technology, capable of warping spacetime around an enemy vessel to tear it apart at the molecular level. No defense had ever stood against it, but using such a weapon after agreeing to peaceful talks would violate every principle of hegemony conduct. On the Relentless, Captain Susan Miller was having her own private conversation with her senior officers. The initial tension of first contact had eased, but caution still guided their actions. "Sentinel is detecting unusual power fluctuations from the alien vessel," Lieutenant Alan Reeves reported. "They're channeling energy to a system we haven't identified yet, something deep within their ship's core." Susan frowned. "Could it be a weapon?" "Possibly," Alan replied. "The energy signature doesn't match anything we've seen from their conventional weapons, but the power level is significantly higher. Whatever they're charging, it's orders of magnitude more powerful than what they've shown us so far." Chief Engineer Frank Sullivan studied the sensor readings on his tablet. "Captain, the energy pattern resembles theoretical models for space-time distortion technology. If they've developed a practical application, they could have a weapon that our shields weren't designed to stop." Susan finished his thought. Dr. Linda Howard looked troubled. "The hegemony has existed for thousands of years. It makes sense they would have developed some technologies beyond our understanding, even if their standard military tech has stagnated." Susan made her decision quickly. "Battle stations. Power up all defensive systems and prepare countermeasures across the full spectrum. Lieutenant Commander William Porter, prepare a boarding team. If diplomacy fails, we need to understand what we're facing." William Porter, the Relentless's tactical officer and head of security, nodded firmly. His stocky frame and steady gaze reflected years of experience in high-risk operations. "Team is ready, Captain. 6 of our best, equipped with adaptive armor and multi-phase weapons. Susan turned to Communications Officer Patricia Woods. Reopen the channel to Commander Zixtar. Let's see if we can resolve this peacefully. The alien commander's face appeared on the main screen moments later. Susan noticed immediately that his posture had changed again, showing what the translation system identified as defensive authority in his species' body language. Commander Zixtar, Susan began, keeping her tone neutral but firm. Our sensors detect your vessel is powering up a new system with significant energy requirements. In the interest of our peaceful discussions, I request an explanation. The alien commander's expression remained unreadable to human eyes, but his voice carried a new edge. Captain Miller, the galactic hegemony has maintained peace among thousands of species for longer than your civilization has existed. This occasionally requires us to demonstrate capabilities beyond conventional weapons. Susan's expression hardened slightly. Commander, powering unknown weapons during peace talks could be interpreted as hostile intent. I thought we had moved beyond demonstrations. Zixtar made a gesture with all four arms that the translation system couldn't interpret. Some technologies transcend ordinary classification as weapons, Captain. The system we are preparing serves as the ultimate guarantee of hegemony security. Its existence has prevented countless wars. As the conversation continued on the main screen, William Porter quietly assembled his boarding team near the ship's transportation bay. The six-person team wore the latest Earth military adaptive armor, designed to adjust its properties in response to different weapon types and environmental conditions. Each carried a multi-phase rifle developed after the Proxima Centauri conflict, capable of shifting its energy signature to penetrate various shield types. On the Celestial Harmony, Science, Officer Krill monitored the human ship with growing alarm. Commander, he interrupted through the private communication channel. The humans are powering up multiple systems simultaneously. Their energy readings are spiking across all defensive arrays. Zixtar maintained his diplomatic expression for the video feed, but felt his confidence wavering. The humans had already demonstrated shields that could withstand the hegemony's standard weapons and attack capabilities that could penetrate their own defenses. What other surprises might this young warforged species have developed? Captain Miller, Zixtar said, making a final diplomatic effort. The hegemony has no desire for conflict. Our technology is being prepared purely as a precaution, as I'm sure yours is as well. Perhaps we should both power down our advanced systems and continue our cultural exchange. Susan considered his words carefully. The alien commander was offering a way out for both of them, a chance to step back from the brink. But the sensor readings showing the massive energy buildup in the alien vessel continued to trouble her. I agree in principle, Commander, she replied. But transparency builds trust. My science officer informs me that your ship appears to be preparing a space-time distortion device of unprecedented power. Such technology poses risks to both our vessels if improperly contained. Zixtar's eyes widened in genuine surprise. The humans had correctly identified the nature of the gravitational disruptor, something no species at their development stage should be capable of. Your sensors are remarkably advanced, he acknowledged. Yes, the technology you detected is a gravitational manipulation system. In 10,000 years it has been deployed only 3 times, always as a last resort to prevent greater conflicts. Its activation requires authorization from me and 2 senior officers. The tension on both bridges remained high as the 2 commanders assessed each other. Susan knew that de-escalation was the wisest course but couldn't ignore the potential threat. William Porter's boarding team remained on standby, ready to transport across if needed. I propose a gesture of mutual trust, Susan finally said. We will power down our forward weapons array if you deactivate your gravitational system. As a show of good faith, I'm also willing to share our shield frequency modulators, which would help protect your ship against attacks similar to our demonstration earlier. The offer surprised everyone on both ships. Sharing shield technology with a newly encountered species violated standard Earth protocols, but Susan had made a calculated decision. The modulators would not reveal the full adaptive capabilities of human shields, but would demonstrate goodwill and give the aliens a taste of human innovation. On the Celestial Harmony, Zixtar consulted quietly with his officers. The human offer was unexpected and potentially valuable. Hegemony shield technology had remained essentially unchanged for centuries, with only incremental improvements to power efficiency. The human modulators might provide insights that would normally take decades of research to develop independently. "Your offer is generous, Captain Miller," Zixtar finally responded. "The hegemony accepts. We will deactivate our gravitational system immediately, and would be honored to receive your shield modulation technology." As both ships began powering down their advanced weapons, the immediate crisis passed. William Porter's boarding team stood down but remained ready in case the situation changed. The Relentless's science team prepared a data package containing the shield frequency modulators, carefully constructed to share valuable technology without revealing Earth's most critical defensive secrets. For the first time since the encounter began, both commanders allowed themselves to relax slightly. What had started as a tense first contact with shows of force had evolved into a cautious exchange of technology and knowledge. The massive hegemony diplomatic vessel Stellar Concord entered Earth orbit 3 weeks after the first encounter between the Relentless and the Celestial Harmony. Unlike the sleek exploratory ship commanded by Zixtar, this vessel was designed to impress with its size and ornate external features that had been added over thousands of years of hegemony tradition. Captain Susan Miller stood in Earth Command headquarters alongside Admiral Gregory Nelson, watching the view screen as the alien ship took up position at the agreed coordinates. "They certainly know how to make an entrance," Admiral Nelson commented, his weathered face showing both caution and curiosity. At 62, he had guided Earth's space defense strategy through the resource wars and first contact with hostile species. Now he faced the most significant diplomatic challenge of his career. Commander Zixtar described their diplomatic protocols as quite elaborate, Susan replied. "Apparently, they've been refining them for over 10,000 years. Gregory nodded thoughtfully. 10,000 years of peaceful expansion has its advantages, but our experience with the Celestial Harmony showed they've grown complacent in some critical areas." The Admiral had been skeptical when Susan's initial reports reached Earth. The idea that human military technology could surpass that of an ancient spacefaring civilization had seemed unlikely, even accounting for Earth's conflict-driven innovation. But detailed analysis of the sensor logs and the successful test of the hegemony shield frequency modulators had convinced him and the United Earth government that Susan's assessment was correct. "The Hegemony Council delegation is ready to transport down," announced Communications Officer Patricia Woods, who had been brought to Earth specifically for this diplomatic meeting due to her experience with the alien translation systems. Admiral Nelson straightened his formal uniform. "Let's not keep them waiting." The transport pad in the center of the room activated, and 5 hegemony representatives appeared in a swirl of light. Commander Zixtar stood at the center, now wearing elaborate, ceremonial armor that signified his elevated status after the first contact mission. Beside him stood 4 other aliens of his species, each wearing different colored robes that the translation program identified as representing various hegemony governmental departments. "Admiral Nelson of Earth," Zixtar said, performing a complex greeting gesture with all 4 of his arms. "The Galactic Hegemony extends peaceful greetings and recognition to your species." Gregory stepped forward and returned the greeting with a human handshake, which the aliens had been briefed to expect. "Commander Zixtar, on behalf of the United Earth government, we welcome you and your delegation to our planet." The formal introductions continued as each alien delegate was presented to the human representatives. Susan noticed that the aliens' body language showed a mixture of diplomatic poise and barely concealed tension. The encounter with the Relentless had clearly shaken their confidence in hegemony technological superiority, something they had taken for granted for millennia. The main diplomatic conference began in Earth Command's Grand Meeting Hall, with representatives from all major Earth nations and colonies in attendance. The hegemony delegates sat across from them, their scaled skin reflecting the room's lighting in subtle blue patterns. High Counselor Draz, the most senior hegemony representative, spoke first. "For 10,000 years, the galactic hegemony has maintained peace across 27% of this galaxy. Our policy has always been to welcome new spacefaring species into our collective, sharing knowledge and protection in exchange for cooperation and resources. Admiral Nelson listened carefully before responding. Earth appreciates the hegemony's peaceful intentions. Humanity has only been exploring space for a century, but we've encountered both friendly and hostile species during that time. We value peaceful relations, but we've learned to remain vigilant. Counselor Draz's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, Commander Zixtar's report described your species' unusual developmental path in great detail. In normal circumstances, the hegemony would offer technological assistance to help your civilization advance. However, he paused, seeming uncomfortable with what came next. It appears that in some areas, particularly defensive and weapons systems, your technology has already surpassed our own. A murmur ran through the human delegation. Although they had been briefed on the Relentless's encounter, hearing a representative of an ancient alien civilization acknowledge human technological superiority was still surprising. Frank Sullivan, now serving as Earth's technical advisor for the negotiations, leaned forward. The hegemony has existed for millennia without serious external threats. Earth's history has been different. We faced extinction-level events multiple times before reaching space, and our early encounters with other species were often hostile. These challenges forced rapid innovation. Science Minister Krill, who had served aboard the Celestial Harmony during the encounter, nodded in agreement. We have studied your historical records with great interest. Your species' ability to adapt under pressure is remarkable. What took the hegemony centuries to develop, you accomplished in decades. Admiral Nelson directed the conversation toward practical matters. The United Earth government proposes a mutual exchange of technology and knowledge. We believe both our civilizations could benefit from cooperation rather than competition. The negotiations continued for hours, with both sides carefully navigating the unprecedented situation. The hegemony, accustomed to technological superiority in all first contact situations, struggled to adjust to their new position. The humans, aware of their military advantage, but recognizing the aliens' vastly greater experience in space, sought a balanced agreement. By the end of the day, the framework for a historic treaty had emerged. Earth would gain access to the hegemony's advanced faster-than-light travel technology and star maps covering thousands of systems. In exchange, humans would share their adaptive shield technology and help the hegemony update their defensive systems. As the formal meetings concluded, Susan found herself standing with Commander Zixtar in the observation dome overlooking Earth's night side, where city lights traced the outlines of continents below. "Your planet is beautiful," Zixtar said, his voice carrying a tone the translation system identified as wistful. "So much variety in such a small world," Susan smiled. "We've worked hard to preserve it, especially after the environmental mistakes of our past." The alien commander turned to face her. "In all my 300 years of exploration, I never expected to encounter a species like yours. The Hegemony Council is still struggling to understand how your military technology advanced so rapidly." "Necessity drives innovation," Susan replied simply. "When facing extinction, humans tend to become very creative very quickly." Zixtar made a gesture of acknowledgement. "The hegemony has begun reviewing our defensive technology development programs. Your shield modulation techniques have already inspired our scientists to pursue research directions abandoned centuries ago." The other side of the observation dome, Admiral Nelson stood with Science Minister Krill, discussing the broader implications of the treaty. "The Hegemony Council has existed for 10,000 years without significant change to its structure or approach," Krill explained. "Your arrival has created quite a disturbance in our political system." Gregory raised an eyebrow. "In what way?" "There. Our factions now arguing for more aggressive research and development, particularly in military technology," the alien scientist said. "Others suggest we should limit contact with humanity to prevent what they see as contamination of our stable society with your more chaotic approach." "And what do you believe, Minister?" Gregory asked. Krill's scales shifted to a deeper blue, indicating thoughtfulness in his species. "I believe the universe has a way of preventing stagnation. Perhaps the hegemony has been dominant for too long, without meaningful challenge. Your species, with its different perspective and approach to technology, may be exactly what we need. The diplomatic meetings continued over the following days. Both civilizations began to recognize the potential benefits of their unlikely partnership. The hegemony offered stability, vast experience, and technologies refined over thousands of years. Humanity brought innovation, adaptability, and fresh approaches to problems the aliens had long considered solved. In the final signing ceremony, Admiral Nelson and High Counselor Draz formalized the Treaty of Earth, establishing peaceful relations between humanity and the galactic hegemony. The treaty included provisions for cultural exchange, technological cooperation, and mutual defense against common threats. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Nelson addressed the assembled representatives of both species. Today marks not just an agreement between Earth and the hegemony, but a new chapter in galactic history. We come from different worlds and different histories, but we share the same stars and the same future. 6 months later, Susan Miller stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UES Cooperation, Earth's first starship incorporating hegemony-faster-than-light technology. Beside her stood Commander Zixtar, now serving as the official hegemony liaison to Earth. Together they watched as the ship prepared for its maiden voyage beyond Earth's solar system. "Ready to make history again, Commander?" Susan asked as the engines powered up.